We will begin shortly. Let's wait a few moments for others to join us. Thank you for your patience. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is our great pleasure to welcome you all to the virtual session on techniques for successful business pitches of IdeaForge, the most anticipated inter-university ideathon of the year, organized by the Computer Science Students Association of the University of Kelaniya. I'm Koshila Hansani, moderator for today's session. To all the participants, we are thrilled to have you here. Your enthusiasm and commitment have truly inspired us. This is your chance to shine, think creatively, and make a difference. First of all, let me introduce the Computer Science Student Associations in the University of Kelaniya. Computer Science Students Association is the pioneer subject association of the Faculty of Computing and Technology and one of the most dynamic student bodies in the University of Kelaniya, with a vision of to become a center of the excellence in creation and dissemination of knowledge in computing and technology for a sustainable development. CSSA works always to maximize the potential of the CS students and to reveal their hidden skills. Now, let me introduce IdeaForge. IdeaForge is an inter-university ideathon organized by the Computer Science Students Association in University of Kelaniya. This initiative is an attempt to connect all young and science enthusiasts around Sri Lanka, creating a dynamic and collaborative platform that brings together participants to brainstorm, ideate, and prototype solutions for real-world challenges. IdeaForge is a competition held for the youth to unleash their creativity, innovations, and design knowledge while ensuring that the solution generated align with the current demands of technological applications. Now, we are moving to the most awaited part of today's session. Let me introduce the guest speaker for the business workshop of IdeaForge. Ms. Nadisha Nanayakara obtained her Bachelor of Science Honours degree in Information Systems and Management from the University of London. She obtained her Master of Science degree in Analysis, Design and Management of Information Systems degree from the London School of Economics and Political Science. As a postgraduate qualified, versatile IT professional with a passion for building sustainable value on key business and client engagements, she has been actively engaged in business consultancy and business development initiative for custom-built software application for more than 6 years. With previous work experience in software quality assurance, test and robotic process automation. Currently, she holds the position of Senior Manager in Business Consulting at Virtusa. Before moving on, you can direct your question via the link provided in the chat box, and we will having a Q&A session to resolve the problems at the end of the event. Ms. Nadisha, the stage is yours.
Thanks a lot, Kaushila. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, madam. We can hear you.
Okay. So good evening and thanks for that introduction, Kaushila. And to all the participants, very pleased to meet you. I think there's about 37, so maybe I'm guessing about 35 of you from, I think, 7 different teams. And let's try to make sure that you get the most out of this session so that you can present your ideas to the panel of judges. I think it's going to happen sometime shortly. And most importantly, that you're also able to present those solutions in such a way that you can obviously win their attention and make sure that there is some substance that they take away from it and they can see all the hard work that you have put in. Okay. So I'm going to switch off my camera for the moment and I will switch on to the presentation and then we'll move on from there. All right. All right, can all of you see my screen? One of you can confirm, then we can move forward.
We can see my screen, madam.
Okay, so you can see the slide, right? All right.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move forward. All right, so all of you, quick question. How long have you been working on your particular solution that you have to present to the judges? 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month? How long has it been? Anyone wants to give me an answer? Kaushila, how long have the teams been working on this solution?
One week, madam. And they have 3 weeks.
Sorry?
They have 3 weeks.
3 weeks to, so what stage are they now in? Have they finished crafting their solutions and they are ready to present, or they're still in the process of crafting their solution? Just so that I have an understanding. They're ready to present, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So essentially, guys, let's have a few of you to speak up, okay? Now, if you guys are going to be pitching in front of a panel of individuals, right? Might be your lecturers, might be external parties, right? You're going to have to talk. So one way of doing that is, I don't want to make this a very formal session, right? The idea is to get you guys to relax and understand what this process is like, right? And also just to make sure that you don't wind up doing another presentation, right? This is not about just doing a presentation at the end of the day like you do for most other assignments, right? You have to tell your story. Now that's why, if you notice, even in my presentation title, I have said, what's your story? So the whole purpose of you doing a pitch is to tell someone a unique story, right? And to tell them a few what we call USP, unique selling points. Why should they be listening to you? Why should they think that your solution is going to be an answer to a problem? Why should they think that your solution, we say two teams have chosen the same problem statement, right? Typically what happens in the normal world, then you have to decide on one solution, right? Then you can't pick both those. So what would make one better than the other? So all of this is about telling an individual story that you guys have gone through in a certain process, right? And that's what we call a pitch. So I've only got one slide because for me, that's my story to tell you how to do a good sales pitch, right? This is not the one and only way to do it, but it's a set of tips for you guys that will make that presentation that you do at the end in terms of telling your story a lot better. Okay, so I'll get started, but I hope that I will have a few more folks who would be interested in talking about or answering at least a few questions as we go along, right? So now if you see, there are a few steps that I feel makes a difference in how you go about getting ready to do this pitch, right? And if you look at this process, right on the top is that last part, pitching your story, okay? But there are several steps before that that you need to do in order to get to that point. And that is what you see in the steps below that. And of course, I have been a little smart and I have actually put a little caption that actually starts with the first letter of each and every letter in the word pitch. Okay. But let's see whether it actually matches up to the requirement of what you have to do. So we start from the bottom and then we move upwards. Okay. So what do I mean by hatch your story? Now this is all about telling a story now. Okay. All of you have been working on a problem statement. Agreed. It's some kind of a business problem that you have been working on, all right, which needs to be solved. That's why you are coming up with a solution. If there was no problem, you won't come up with a solution. Now, the first thing, and fundamentally, a lot of you now are going to be getting into your computer science to engineering. One of the fundamental rules of engineering is that you can't address a problem in a very overarching sense. What do I mean by that? You can't take a huge problem and say, we'll address all aspects of this problem in one go. You have to break it down into smaller chunks, smaller parts, right? So that's the first thing. And you must have already done that. You came up with a problem statement. I hear that it's something that you were supposed to come up on your own, right? You've broken down into smaller problems or smaller areas that you can focus on, okay? So now I know this is supposed to be a bit of a competition, but just for the sake of giving an example from what you guys have thought of rather than what I have thought of or what I can think of, does one of you want to tell me something of the problem statement that you guys addressed? You're only talking about the problem, right? Not the solution. One of your teams who wants to just give me an example of a problem statement that you started with? Yes, no? පිච් එකක් කරන්න නම් සෑහෙන අමාරු වෙනවා දැන් කතා කරේ නැත්තම් හරියද? I know you can't see my face and I can't see yours, but අනිවාර්යෙන් ඉතින් කතා කරන්න වෙනවා. නැත්තම් ඉතින් පිච් එකක් කරන්න බෑනේ. I apologize to anyone if you know you're from the Tamil medium. I can speak a few words, but I'm just trying to lighten up the mood because I think you guys are very serious now and, all on listening mode. It's not supposed to be a lecture, by the way, right? Mindula, Koshila, you guys want to maybe ask anyone from your teams? I don't know people individually, right? Otherwise, I can randomly pick out a few names. But someone wants to mention a problem statement that they came up with? Otherwise, it's not going to be very interactive, neither. You guys can hear me, right?
Excuse me, miss.
Yes. Tell me, who's this?
Yeah, I'm Anil Kodugama from IdeaForge. So we came up with a solution for the undergraduates who are really mark a smart real-time camera system to mark their attendance. Where nowadays really most of the university students, they tend to really put those false signatures of themselves and mark their attendance. So we are going to really automate that problem and really allow the students to uh, use their face and recognize themselves and mark their attendance. And also we hope to develop that to really in order to mark ticketing prices in Sri Lanka, especially when it comes to cricket matches in Sri Lanka. There are so many frauds happening around because from one ticket, so many people can go into the ground. So we are going to automate. We are going to provide an automotive real-time camera system solution for that.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't catch your name. Did you say you were Ranidu or
No,
something with R?
Tanil Kodugama.
Tanilka, okay. So Tanilka, thank you. I appreciate the fact that you took the initiative to speak up, okay? And it's good. So I think in what you told me, you have figured out the order in which you told me was more on the solution first before the problem statement, right? But what triggered it is, if I'm not mistaken, one point is one problem statement immediately, the immediate use case that you're trying to address, right? Is that within the university environment, when you guys sit for your lectures, right, there is no way to clearly validate whether the person who's actually signing and saying they're joining a lecture is actually there or not. Am I correct? Does that sound like what you guys had as a problem statement? Yes?
Yes, miss. It's an
Okay.
education for the educational part we are focusing, and then we are going to develop into some larger scale platform as well in order to mark
Okay.
ticketing.
And then now you can see a problem where similar, or I can say you can now see the fact that similar problems existing other use cases as well, right? So in your case, you all have thought of a scenario where there's a lot of, I think, black market tickets, right? Happening when it comes to cricket matches and things like that. And you think that there is the scope to extend this to that direction as well. There can be many other scenarios. Now, if you go with the ticketing scenario, I don't know, maybe there's a use case for it when it comes to things like concerts and other events, right? And now, if you're going with the premise of that, I think what is important next is, right? So we go to the next parts of the presentation as well. I just put this back on presentation mode, right? Is that uh, it's important generally to start with that problem statement, guys. Especially when you're doing your pitch, I'll tell you that when you're crafting your story, but always make sure you have a very clear problem statement before you start talking about the solution, right? Because ප්‍රශ්නේ බරපතලකම අනුව තමා උත්තරේ තියෙන වැදගත්කම ඇත්තටම එළි දැක්වෙන්නේ. So if I was to translate, depending on how you actually say your problem statement is and the nature of that problem, that's when the outside world, including the panel of judges that you are talking to, can understand that you are addressing a issue that needs to be fixed rather than you guys talking about solution first. So always make sure now itself, right, as a part of building up to your pitch, you have that problem statement clearly written in simple terms. You try to flesh it out because all of us in this world, guys, what we are doing as a part of our jobs, right? Whether you build software, whether you do some other thing, is solving problems in the world. So that's the fundamental starting point. You have to have a problem to solve. If you don't have a problem to solve, then there's nothing really to do. Okay. So I can't stress on how important it is to start from that point and then go down towards what are the solutions that we can do in order to fix this problem. Now, as a team, when you guys are working, the next thing is now you have already come up with the solution. So to some extent, you have passed these stages. By now, you must be clearly understanding within your team, in order to address this problem, whatever solution that you're coming up with, how much do you know and how much do you not know as a team? So for an instance, if you were talking about something like face recognition software, right? There are different formats of software that can be used for that, right? There are different solutions that can be used for that. In terms of high resolution, this, that, and the other might be one angle to it, right? I just took this example of what your colleague mentioned, right? Or you take a broader problem statement. Now you say, someone comes to you and says, it's a store, right? Now the biggest problem statement they tell you is, we don't have enough customers or revenue is going down. That's the problem statement, very broad problem statement. Our revenue is going down, or the cost of us managing things in our store is increasing. It can be one or the other. Then they say we need to do something to solve it. Now, between yourselves, when you all are brainstorming and coming up with ideas on what to solve, of course, technology is an enabler. Technology is always an enabler of solving a problem. It's not the one and only thing you have to do to solve the problem. Technology generally is coupled with a change in the process of what you do. Otherwise, what happens? You have a very bad process. You come and bring technology on top of it. Then what you're doing is you're automating that bad process. Then it's garbage in, garbage out. Okay. So first you have to actually think of the process involved. Even if we were doing this manually, are we doing something valuable in terms of attracting customers, in terms of how we actually have classified our product catalog? Does it make sense to the end customer? Is that why customers are not coming? What is our competition doing? What are they doing better than what we are doing? Right? That's the side of, if you feel that the problem is mainly lying in the fact that you are not attracting enough customers. On the other side, if you think the cost of managing your store is so high, you have to think through the problems in terms of the processes. How is your supply chain in that? Now, when you start working as a team, all of you won't have answers to all of this. For an example, maybe one of you is doing a little sideline business, right? Maybe you're running a little online thing, store. You're running something off Facebook, right? So you know a bit about how to manage customers. You have a bit of experience in doing sales and things like that in that sense. Maybe another one of you has done an internship, we'll say with a manufacturing organization. So therefore, you know a bit more about how supply chain works, right? How inputs flow into the company before you actually produce an output, right? So as a team, and then in terms of knowledge, right? Now you're building a solution. Even if you take the one that we were discussing earlier on, there will be a lot of unknowns rather than the known. Some of you might have dabbled in what you call face recognition software, right? There are different variations of it where you call this OCR technology, HCR technology, which is related to it. I'm not saying it's the same thing. You might have had some experience in it. Then you have to develop the back end of the application. Some of you might have a bit more experience in, I don't know, doing some freelance work maybe. The other, some of you might have different other skills. For an instance, the person who's best able to organize the 5 or 6 of you resources as a team, that's a project management skill. Okay, it's important to know this because when it comes to actually doing your pitch, you have to understand who is going to take what responsibility. Now, you worked as a team, but in terms of getting the knowledge, getting to the solution, figuring out what you are going to do, you must have done most of it, obviously, if you're getting ready for the pitch. But now you need to know your strengths in terms of who can do what a bit better than someone else. And I'll tell you why, okay? Now, the last point I don't want to spend a lot of time on, but I seriously hope as a part of crafting your solution, you guys did what we call smart research and not pointless research. For an example, if you were trying to say, look at doing a process automation, we'll say, right? I just took a random example. If 5 of you are in the team, all 5 of you researching about what is process automation, what type of tools are there out there to do process automation, no point, right? All 5 of you doing the same research, how is that going to be beneficial? So I certainly hope that when you looked at your solution, now that you have passed that stage, that you actually did it in such a way that, complementing that point I said before, right? If you were looking at, say, this automation problem, one of you researched on the different types of tools that's available for process automation. Another one of you researched about the typical problems you face when you have process automation. What are the typical challenges you face, and what type of things must you do to overcome it? Hope one of you at least took, I'm again going only with a hypothetical example, right? Because I don't know the use cases you all have now, right? So now even in this case of face recognition software, I hope one of you researched about previous use cases where it has been used. Has it been a success? If not, why did it fail? What are the limitations it has? I hope another one of you researched into what are the different platforms or technologies that you can use and its benefits and plus and minuses, right? There has to be a reason why you went with one over the other. So those are important things to do, because otherwise you wind up not really getting to the part of crafting your story. So hatching your story is bringing together all these elements in order to start building your story, right? So that's the next element, crafting your story. Now, when I say crafting your story, this is typically the sequence that you need to look at in terms of getting to the next level. Okay, you have to have a clear problem statement. As I said, the world is all about solving business problems. If you don't have a business problem, you don't need technology. Technology is an enabler of solving business problems, right? So the strength in your pitch is about what's the problem that you're trying to solve, and how bad is that problem that you really, really need to come up with a good solution to solve it. So you have to showcase that. Now, here's another example of doing it in a slightly different way. Now, most of you know Steve Jobs' story and the iPhone. Technically speaking, if you look at the history of it, there was really no need for an iPhone. The iPhone, for that matter, was just like any other Android device in terms of giving you certain basic capabilities that a smartphone should. But Steve Jobs was smart enough to create a problem before he created the need. So when I say create a problem, what he did was the messaging he carried out in his pitch was to say, to the effect of, I don't remember the context of all the conversations he had, but it was always about leaving off that subtle message at the end saying, here is a problem, there is a problem. You really do need this product. Otherwise, you don't get these fantastic images the way that I'm showing you right now. Okay? You don't get that experience of holding on to a device that has such seamless edges and such a good feel in your hand, right? When it's a phone. He created that problem statement. So whichever way, right? That's just another alternative angle. I don't think a lot of you would have thought up something which is almost non-existent and come up with it. You would have thought of an actual existing problem, but start with that. Make sure the second bullet point is who is affected by it. You have to have some very clear direction in terms of the people who are affected. When I say people, I mean a role. If you go back to that example of the store, the problem was that you are having, we say, either lack of revenue because you think you don't have enough customers. That can be one side of the problem. On the other side of the problem, your processes in the way you handle your goods and all is not good. So therefore, you're incurring a lot of cost. Now, who are your affected stakeholders? Directly speaking, the store owner, the employees in the store. Then we will say the customers, the obvious ones, right? Sometimes maybe that store is a part of a chain of other stores. So if that's the case, it's going to affect a larger operation. Now, if something goes wrong and the store has to shut down, who are the other people can get affected? What about their suppliers? The ones who have been giving them all this for all this time, the goods, right? The raw materials. They're going to get affected, right? They're going to lose a customer. So when you are talking about your problem statement, you might not be able to address a solution that is going to fit all these people. But you have to at least fundamentally understand these are the type of roles or the nature of people, individuals who are going to get affected by it. And out of these people, whose problem am I trying to solve? Now, in that example of the store, maybe your current, whatever solution you come up with in this first round, right, is not going to be able to do much if for the suppliers. Your immediate thing is to solve a problem that is either affecting maybe the customer or the store owner and the staff in the store. Your second, third level answers and solutions might be for helping out even the suppliers to be able to get their goods into your store in a much easier, simpler, cost-effective manner. So it's important to understand who the stakeholders are that we say affected by a problem, because you can't address everything in one go. Now, that's the other thing. When I look at some of the past presentations or pictures that have been done with most of you guys, you try to address all aspects of the problem in one go. In the practical world, it does not happen like that. Okay? So you have to be able to break, that's why I say breaking down the problem. Then if you had only 3 weeks to work on it, you figure out this is what we have focused on. Be very clear to your audience that this is where we have focused on. The rest of it is for phase 2, phase 3, whatever. Right? But you must know what you are doing at this immediate stand. Then we have the solution and the solution alignment. What do I mean? Now, solution, I think, guys, you guys have now thought through. One thing I will tell you at this point is, since all of you would have come up with your very unique technology solutions, please do remember that the word solution, like I said before, technology is only an enabler. Very often in the real world, sometimes we go in, and I'm telling you this out of years of experience, you talk to a customer, sometimes there are fundamental little problems. I'm not talking about the large scale ones, right? First, start with reorganizing their processes. 99% of the time, businesses have processes which have a lot of waste in it. We do what we call an as is and to be state mapping, right? You look at the as is process, the current process, and then you say, this is the kind of to be state I want to go. These are the kind of business objectives we want to achieve. And you first clean out the processes. Now, if you take something like robotic process automation, we don't even bring in new applications. I don't know whether you guys were familiar with it, but several years ago, just before COVID, RPA or robotic process automation was a huge deal in the industry. The fundamental premise of that was to clean up your business processes and to be able to write little scripts that could automate certain tasks which were done manually between processes, right, or between systems, so that you could use your existing systems in a more effective and efficient manner. There are a lot of little things that you repeatedly do in most organizations, right, businesses, where it's a lot of number crunching, reporting, that kind of thing. Same process repeatedly done. Those are the kind of things that we used to do in terms of RPA. So when you're looking at your solution, guys, right, always try to look at it in a holistic sense. Now, you must have come up with something. I'm not asking you to go back and revisit your solution. If you have time to do a little rethinking and see whether you can fine tune it, by all means. Okay? But other than that, what you should focus on is, if I'm going to introduce this solution, do I have to change something in the current process? Because otherwise you are going to simply be automating something, what we call a bad process. First, you have to get your process organized. Then think of digitizing, automating, introducing a new app, something or the other. Now, take a basic example. We talk about introducing different apps for the agri industry, right? Now, what's the point of introducing different apps for the agri industry if the fundamental user of it will say is the farmer? First, you have to teach the farmer how to use a smartphone properly, no, or a tab properly, no. If they can't use a smartphone or a tab in a certain way that helps them to get the data they want or to input some fundamental data that they need to, is there any process of introducing a smart app that can tell them if the weather is like this is the kind of thing you need to do with your crops? If the weather is like, if it's going to be rainy, do this, check your temperature like this. If this is done, you can then, decide whether you should be planting the seeds or not. No point, no, to get your process sorted. So always look at it from that angle, guys, because it's important. Otherwise, you're just trying to slap technology as a plaster. Now, when you're talking about your solutions also, there are different angles to talking about it. I spoke to you about one, which is looking at the process involved in the solution. Apart from that, of course, you will talk about your, if you've developed an application, right? The nature of the application, is it a web app, a mobile app? It can be both, right? You will talk about the front end, the back end, if you need hosting capabilities, what kind of hosting capabilities you need, right? If it's smart devices, what do you expect the user to have? Where will they be able to, where will this centralized data stores? So many aspects you can think of. And I'm sure somewhere along it, you all thought of, cloud automation, I'm sure is already embedded there. I'm sure you guys have tried to fit in AI ML somewhere. I won't be surprised nowadays if you try to fit in some Gen AI thing or seen it. It's fine that you guys are thinking of all these aspects, right? But the viability, or what we call the 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 value of a solution, doesn't necessarily get enhanced in terms of you just bringing AI ML. For an example, if you're doing things like, now you can't go and suggest machine learning in a solution which is not going to collect a lot of data. The fundamental of doing machine learning or deep learning is that you need to have a large data set, and you also need to be having processing capability to match it. Of course, compared to 10-15 years ago, the processing capability we have is much higher nowadays as an industry. That's a different thing. But that doesn't mean to say machine learning will become applicable to your use case. It might be, it might not be. But the idea is that just because AI ML is a buzzword and everyone's talking about it, you don't need to get AI ML into your solution if it's not relevant. Without machine learning, you can run basic regression models also. Regression models also extend to machine learning, but sometimes it's just basic correlationships that you need to draw, right? And you can notice patterns. So if you are not planning on collecting that amount of data, don't go and suggest that. Then it looks like you guys are just not really thinking about your solution. Okay, and then what do I mean? So those are the aspects you think of the solution, right, guys? I'll give you another example from automation. This is all for you to think before you actually present. Now, if you look at automation, right? When it comes to automation, what is a good candidate for automation? Here's how I would make a judgment on that. This is how we typically assess it during our consultation engagements with the client. You have a process what 15 people are doing, I'm random numbers, right? Which is done every single day for 2 hours, 15 people in different departments, we'll say, repeatedly doing it every single day out of a 8-hour workday. Okay, so if it's an 8-hour workday and you're using 2 hours for it, that's 25% of your time spent on it, and you're repeatedly doing it. And now you notice that it's human beings who are doing it now. So we say it's some kind of a report that they are creating. There are mistakes in it, and very basic mistakes where they're actually getting their calculations wrong. Now you have another process where one person is doing once a month. Takes about 3 hours to do it, but once a month. Not that many errors also. So now if you were to compare the two processes and decide which one you want to automate, typically the first one is a candidate for automation, second one is not. Why? By the time you spend time and effort to automate the process, which that one person is doing for 3 hours, once a month, into 12 for the year is 12 times, right? You spend more time doing the automation, more time testing the automation, by which time that person can even finish doing it manually. So all the time, effort, money, resources, capabilities spent on doing automation is pointless. Now the first scenario is different. Every single day, 15 people, 25% of their time, repeatedly doing it, repeatedly errors coming. If you automate it, at some point you're going to hit break even. Okay, so I know maybe all of you won't think of all of these angles, but all I can do is to teach you. So if you can make the connection, up to you. And that second part, solution alignment. At the end of the day, whatever solution you come has to help the affected stakeholders that you have now identified solve their problem statement. So it has to loop backwards. There's no point in coming up with a solution if you yourself can't say you have to go and explain this to someone, not as a part of a pitch. We say someone at home, you're saying, this is the solution we are doing. This solution will help these affected parties solve this particular problem. You should be able to say it like that. If you can't say it, there's something amiss there. Okay. Now the last 2 points. Every solution you come up with has to have some benefit. Now, when you say benefit, you'll think, okay, benefit first and foremost is it has to answer the problem statement. Agreed. That's the fundamental benefit of the solution. If we can't answer the problem statement, pointless, no? But typically in a business or sales environment, when we talk about benefits, there are certain areas that you have to talk about. From a business standpoint, if someone wants to look at a solution that you're presenting, here are the benefits we typically look at. Either there has to be a reduction in cost because your new solution is coming in. Those days, without your solution, the cost was X. Now, when your solution comes, the cost is half X. Okay. On the other side, if it's not as a saving in cost, it has to be a increase maybe in revenue. Today, you're making $1 million. Tomorrow, you have to be able to at least project for $2 million. Otherwise, there has to be time saving. Now, with typical automation, one of the fundamental things we look at is time and effort saving. Today, because we are doing it manually, my first example, 15 people into 2 hours per day, into 5 days a week, into what, 52 to 54 weeks a year. That's the amount of effort that I have to pay for to do this manually. If I automate this, the effort, sometimes if you do complete automation, maybe the effort is going to drop down completely. But very often it's some part of it that you automate, right? So when some part of you automate, you will say maybe the effort reduced by 25%, 30%, something like that. Those days when the process was done manually, it takes 2 hours to generate the report. Now, when you have automated it, it takes only 15 minutes to generate the report. The script will run and it will create the report in 15 minutes. That's what I mean by time saving. Got the difference? Effort saving and time saving. Okay. So those are the things. There can be other benefits also. Increase customer satisfaction, right? How about benefits from a compliance side? Now, certain solutions, you have to do things to improve needs from the compliance side. The government will say there are certain regulations you have to meet, specifically in certain industries, right? If it's a finance related solution, it's all linked to the government's process of collecting revenue, we'll say, right? If it's healthcare, there's very strict regulations on how you can even digitize certain things. Likewise with things like insurance, right? So not just the government, there are regulatory bodies that tell you you have to abide by this. So maybe your solutions will help to comply with those regulations. Now, I don't think that might be applicable in your case, but it's a point for you guys to think, right? So things like increased customer satisfaction, that's right. So one thing we notice in a lot of your presentations is sometimes when you come and talk about benefits, you say increases efficiency. Don't say like that. Any solution is supposed to increase efficiency in general. So when you generally say increases efficiency, it's very difficult. Now, on the other hand, you guys don't have enough information to quantify any of your benefits. So no one's expecting you to come and say, we are definitely reducing effort by 25.65%. You don't say things like that. You have to make approximations. For an example, this solution intends to reduce manual effort by almost 2 times, by almost 3 times, something like that. Or this solution aims to increase revenue by maybe 50% or 25%. We'll make it a easier number, something like that. So don't put just random numbers, but see if you can find some sort of a logical mechanism to say something to that effect. Obviously, you don't have a lot of data. You haven't put your solution to test, but please do avoid saying things like this solution aims to increase efficiency. That won't give you a lot of points. But try to be a bit more smarter in how you present those benefits. And the last point is you have to know your limitations of the solution. Every solution you propose will have limitations. If you try to tell someone, especially in the real world, that it does not have limitations, it will not go well. It sounds very fake. And it is fake. Every solution will have limitations. So you, as the party that is proposing your solution, should first know what it is. And there is certain ways in which you can present it. It's fine to present it. There's no such thing that if anyone tells you, why did you tell me the limitations? There's no such thing like that. They look to you to say it first so that you have already told them before they find it themselves. And you have to tell them, we will address this maybe in the next round. Or maybe we need your support in understanding this part of the problem a bit more so that we can solve the limitation. This technology inherently has this limitation, but we think the benefits of it are much greater. Something like that. Okay? Right. Now, telling your story. This is the part where you actually get to the deck, or what we call the PowerPoint slides. Are you guys with me so far? One of you guys is going to have to answer, otherwise I don't know. No? Am I making sense to you guys? Yes, no? Vindula, Koshila, one of you guys want to answer?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it making sense? Are you connecting the dots? Does it make sense to what you guys have been doing so far? Can you take something out of this?
Yes, ma'am.
I hope so. Okay. So the part 3 now is about actually doing the PowerPoint slides, right? I hope now this is where you should be now. Now, if you're telling a story, you have to have a storyline, guys. That is what that initial statement about crafting your story was. There has to be a logical sequence. පුංචි කාලේ කතන්දරයක් කියනකොට කතන්දරේ අන්තිමෙන් පටන් ගන්න මැදට ගිහිල්ලා ඉස්සරහට යන්නේ නැහනේ. නේ? If there was a story that was being read to you, someone starts at the beginning, tells you these are the kind of things that you have to expect, and the story flows downwards, and then there's an ending to the story. Usually starting with some sort of a problem, and then solution being found, and then people happily living with the solution of some sort, right? So there has to be a sequence of how you present. So when you organize your slides, I have told you how you can craft your story. Try to organize it in that order. Then it makes it very easy, and then you also think through a problem in an organized way. Because if you can't explain this solution in an organized way to say there's a general principle, right? Whatever solution you come up with, you should be able to explain it even to a small child, not the details of the solution, right? The high level picture, right? Even explain it to a small child in a few sentences. The child doesn't have to be able to understand everything and anything. There's no difference between you and a primary school child. That's not what I'm saying. But you should be able to explain it in that degree of clarity. So the clarity comes only when you organize your thought process. You can't be first talking about limitations and then talking about the problem statement. So you have to, by default, have a nice logical sequence of where you start and nicely build a storyline. In every slide, when you guys are putting that slide, think, what is the key message I want to give out of this? There has to be a key message. Key takeaway means key message. At the end of the day, what do you want your audience to go away after seeing that slide? If you have 10 bullet points, I can guarantee you audience will not remember more than one, if at all. Especially if all of you are presenting on the same day, right? They're not going to remember much about what was in your slides. So please don't spend a lot of time adding so much of text. Very minimal amount of text. If you can take it with images and stuff, that makes it better. But there has to be a key. Now, if you notice, I'm driving an entire 1 hour conversation using one single slide. My entire story for today is one slide. But I don't think I'm going to miss anything. I have a sequence in which I'm telling you the story. I have the key takeaways in bullet points. If you notice, one important thing here is I am not repeatedly telling you everything which is in the bullet point. I'm not reading the bullet point by point. Under tell your story, first is storyline. Afterwards, key takeaways. Afterwards, text versus images. Afterwards, standard versus consistency. Don't do that. You guys are now training yourself to give a pitch in a professional level. Just a few steps away from coming into the work environment, right? So you have to imagine your audience also, whether it's your lecturers, doesn't matter. This is not your standard assignment presentation. You're presenting a solution which you have come up with. Okay, so every slide, think, is there a key message? If there is no key message to give out of that slide, then probably that slide is of no use to have. Should have a key message. If you're talking about problem statement, that slide might have, say, 5 or 6 bullet points. But at the end of the day, the person looking at it is not going to remember 5, 6 bullet points. They have to be like, a fundamental part of the problem is this. Like a one-line statement. Sometimes we have what we actually put it at the bottom of the slide in bold font, or maybe in a colored background in a little box like what I have put these boxes here, like picture story. Colored background, white font maybe. Very clearly you have one line statement saying this is your key message. Okay. So try to think of it that way. Text versus images. Please guys, don't clutter your slides with text. People don't read that much. And if you're talking also, so you want them to hear you more than to read all your slides. If it was only a written proposal that you're submitting, then you have to have all your text in that because you're not justifying it with a speech, no? And then the other part is the standards and consistency. If you are, that is what tells that you are telling your story in a professional way. If you are using a certain font and, size, font style and size for the header, every single slide, the subject header should be like that. Spell checking is important. Now, just because y'all are going to be engineers, the world is changing in such a way, all of you are not going to be able to get away with, if you want to go forward and talk to your customers, your clients, if you are the solution architect, you should be able to present to them. You don't need someone else to be presenting on behalf of you. And in the rest of the world, all these things matter. I can't, in our part of the world also, it does matter. But, don't leave it for someone else to do it. I know there's this general mentality that says, documentation related work is not, engineering work. Those days are gone, guys. If you can't present your solution to someone, either through a medium of writing or either through a medium of talking, your solution is but an idea. So you have to learn to go and say it, because that's when people get convinced about your story. They get convinced about how confident of what you are doing, right? So those consistencies matter. Don't use all sorts of fonts and colors and this thing. You're no longer learning to do PowerPoint. No, it's not a PowerPoint exercise. It's about you presenting a professional story. Okay, so that's telling your story. Now, ironing out your story. This is what we call the pre-preparation before you actually do your pitch. It is mandatory as a team. First and foremost, know who your audience is. Now, you will know who is going to be sitting in that panel of judges. If they are lecturers that you have been working with, you will know the nature of them. Between yourselves, you'll be like, if this sir is coming, he's definitely going to ask questions like this. It's generally his nature to ask things like this. If this madam is coming, she's definitely going to be talking about this topic and asking because that's her specialty. You have to know your audience, guys. Now, even in the real world, that's how it happens. Before we go talk to a customer, we search about the customer. We have different organizations have different organizational structures. Now, with us, we have a role called client sales, the people who work in client sales. We ask them, who's this person? What's that person's designation in the organization? Can they influence what we are talking? What do we mean by influence? Are they the decision-making power that can actually agree to purchasing our goods and services? In our case, services, right? Or are they only people who are subject matter experts who can go and influence the final decision-making process? Think through a bit like that. So in your case, you don't have to go all that way, right? But you have to know who might be sitting on the panel of judges, because then you can go to that second part. Prepare for the Q&A. The whole purpose of this is you are not going, I don't know how long you're going to get to present. Typically what happens is you have about 15 minutes to present and 5 minutes or 10 minutes for a Q&A. Questions are going to come. You're not going to have all the answers to all the questions because in the first place, you will not know all the questions. But if you prepare and go, you can answer certain ones. And I'll tell you how to handle it there because it's the same in the real world. We can't foresee every question that's going to come. Sometimes the art of managing your pitch is also definitely learning to deal with the unknowns. What does R&R mean in that next point? Roles and responsibilities. That's why I said now that you have worked as a team, you need to know within your team who's good at doing what. Typically, I don't think now, even in the real world, right? If we sit on a client call or a customer call, you might have about 5 or 6 of us on the call. We all have our different roles. Doesn't mean to say all 6 of us go and talk. And certainly you don't do this thing where I have seen this in previous, it's not only with university level stuff, even certain interns when we get to the organization, right? Because they haven't had the exposure. They come and say, I am so-and-so from this team. I'm going to talk about the problem statement. My friend, or you will say my colleague, someone else, right, will talk about the affected stakeholders. Then the next person will talk. You don't say things like that in a formal professional pitch. Very often the way we introduce our team is saying, I'm so-and-so, I represent this team. I'll be walking you through this solution and my colleagues will, from the technical team, right, maybe from the sales team, they will chip in where required. That's how we do it. That doesn't mean to say everyone else needs to feel, my name wasn't mentioned. Because now when you give your presentation on the first slide, you will probably have everyone's names, no? Somewhere you have to have your team shown, right? Even on your last slide, that we don't do as a part of a standard pitch. But for your purpose, your last slide can be, here's my team, or it can be even your first slide. Just maybe a small image of your faces, right? And maybe if each of you had a unique role to play in this, by all means say so. I will take a simple example. We have, I'm just random names, right? We'll say Amali, Sampath, Tilina, and Randika, okay? So maybe Amali was the designated business analyst on this. Tilina was the back-end engineer on this. Sampath was the project manager on this, okay? And Randika was the, be creative, guys, it's okay, right? So have your team presented like that, but please don't go up there in front of the panel and say, I'm so and so, I'll talk about the problem statement. Then Sampath will talk about the affected stakeholders. Randika will talk about the benefits. You don't do it like that. But within that preparation time, you have to know who's going to start the pitch. So for that, you have to know who has the strongest ability to communicate with an audience. Now, one very important thing there, guys, right? When we say communicate with the audience, it's not about your grammar skills or grammatical skills, rather, right? Or how good your English is. It's about the person who can nicely say something in short, sweet sentences and get the message across. It doesn't matter if your grammar is not that great. I say this in a lot of audiences. Whatever your mother tongue is, whether it's Sinhalese or Tamil, if you are not fluent in it, when I say fluent in it, to read, to write, to present, to talk, then you have a problem. Now, in my case, I know I can do all three without batting an eyelash. ගොඩක් දැන් සිංහලෙන් ඉස්සර තරම් ඉස්කෝලේ යන කාලේ තරම් ලියන්නේ නැහැ, but I can write without thinking twice. ඉස්කෝලේ යන කාලේ වැඩිපුර හරියක් මේ debating එහෙම කරේ සිංහලෙන්. So if you are shy about your language skills, know that English is only a second language, and it's what the business world is using. Yes, it's the common language globally, though I think Chinese is also taking a place in that. But you don't have to worry too much about that. It's something gradually you can improve. And if you are going to be in the business world, you will have to improve it, but you don't have to worry about it so much right now. But someone has to take on the confidence to be fine. I'll start the pitch. I'll be the one who'll drive it. Then between the rest of you, now you know that first one I said, know what you know what you don't know. Now, if one of you knows more about the automation side, if some question comes on the automation side, you have to be able to answer it. Don't keep it to the person who's doing the pitch to answer, because it's very difficult. That person is in one mindset. They are presenting, they are talking. The minute a question comes, it distracts you from your thought process. That's a normal way it happens. Okay? Then you have to have someone else who's going to quickly pick up and answer that question. That's how it works in the real world. People don't wait to be saying, here, answer that question, will you? Someone quickly picks up and answers. If someone knows a bit more about, some part of the problem or the solution, the minute some related question comes, we talk about it. That's why we call doing a dry run, guys. What we mean by dry run is exactly what I'm telling you. This is where you iron out your story. Who's going to talk? If questions come of this nature, I'll take this. If something like this comes, you give this a try. Worst case scenario, you have to have a backup plan also, guys. Now say in that 4 names I mentioned earlier, I can't remember the names, right? You say Amali was going to present. What if Amali falls sick on that day? Who's going to be the backup to? You have to have a backup plan. That's how we work in the real world. You can't do anything if the child falls sick. What are you going to do? Stop the presentation. Who's the backup? Who's going to take over? That's why you do a dry run. Dry run is not for you to practice your lines and be like, I will go and say this right. Even if you practice your lines like that, after years of talking on stage, different events, occasions, I can guarantee you forget a lot. Because the minute you see your audience, the reaction is very different to you practicing with your immediate team in front of a mirror. You can practice, and you should, because you shouldn't be looking at your phone and talking. That's the other thing, right? Don't keep looking at your phone or your notes and talking. Learn to say your story. It's a story you're saying, right? Then you don't have to put in so much of effort. Important points you can have as a few notes. But don't go there and stare at your screen and your paper and just look at that. Then the other person doesn't get a lot of confidence from you. So what you have to practice is to be able to say your story in a natural way, not to be able to remember everything and say it. You will forget stuff. That's okay. Say only the important things. And you're not going to be judged on your speaking skills. This is not a speech contest. If you can get your overall story, if they understand the problem statement, if they understand the affected stakeholders, if they understand how your solution solves the problem and helps the stakeholders, if they understand the benefits, if they know how you're going to, that you identify limitations, you're going to solve it. You don't have to tell them all the benefits or the limitations in the world. If they capture 2 or 3, enough, you're good to go. And somewhere in all of that, stress on what is so unique about yours. So for you to say what's unique about yours, you need to know what your competition is also doing. You can't be the first team in the world that has come up with a solution like this. I'm sure there are other teams that have come up with all sorts of, or not teams, sorry, other outside parties who come up with similar solutions. And you say, why is your solution unique to this problem statement? Okay? So the last part, doing your pitch. There will be unexpected surprises. More than once it has happened. You get on stage, you realize that there's something wrong and you have nothing to do with it. You're waiting for the place that was supposed to organize your logistics, right? Mics don't work. Suddenly the what do you call this, projector stops working in between your presentation. So if you're going to rely on always looking at your slide and talking, then you're in trouble. Just because a project, it happened to me once, not a projector. While I was presenting, something happened and my lap switched off. Or it froze. I can't remember which one happened. And I was in front of it was a senior leadership visit. And I had to carry on the story like nothing happened. These things happen. Don't worry about it. Normal things. That's what shows your confidence, guys. That's what, when we look for professionals, like when we recruit us, right? Apart from asking you and validating your core skills, that's the fundamental we don't know. Other things we look for is how quickly you adapt to situations. Because in our industry, more than any other industry, flexibility and adaptation is a must. And these are the opportunities you get to try it out. So it's okay. You trip up, you forget to say something, sequence gets a bit out. It's okay, carry on from there. Don't stop. And a few pointers on stage fright, right? Now, I don't know what your audience is, whether it's going to be, 3-4 people seated in a table and no one else, or whether it's going to be other people around you. Don't focus too much on people's expressions. Sometimes they might be thinking of some other problem that they had in the morning and came. Not that they are thinking that your solution or your presentation is not quite right. They might not necessarily always be people who smile thing. There's nothing much you can do about it. But don't stay focused on that too long. Typically, when we talk to larger audiences, we do keep eye contact, but we don't keep eye contact on one person for a long time, that if that person even sneezes, you get distracted and you forget what you're going to say. And it's okay. You're going to, like I said, forget your words. You might trip up and not say something. It's okay. Carry on from there. Don't stop. And at the end of the day, you're pitching your story as a team. Whether all 5 of you don't present or not is irrelevant. Presenting is only one part of it. Now you saw the process that was involved to get to your final pitch. So all of you have to execute as a team. That is what teamwork is about. You either win as a team or you don't win as a team. There's no two questions, no in between parts about it. All of you would have had your ups and downs in terms of how you got to where you finished your solution. But when you pitch your story, right? Now, in our case, when we pitch in front of a client, we represent the company. So we might be from different departments. It happens like that. Everyone on the call is not from the same department, the same project, friends, you know. In front of a customer, there's a lot of us who are maybe just prepared or got together for this purpose only very recently. We have people from the location that we are working in. Very often we work with on-site teams either in the US or the UK or Australia or whatever it is like that. Then we have other teams from India. So very often it's a whole bunch of us. But as a whole, if there's one thing, we represent the organization, we represent the company. So either we succeed as that unit, or if things go wrong, then as a team, we need to take the responsibility. So it's the same with you. If your pitch is going to succeed, each and every one of you have a part to play, whether you play it in front of your panel talking about it or not, or whether it was in the back end. When I mean by back end, you were the person who organized everything, organized the people, organized everything. That is a huge role to play. You have no idea how much that planning process actually helps you to succeed in getting to your pitch. It's not only about the person who spoke or the person who did all the jazzy part about the solution. Okay, so that's pretty much it. I think we started also 15 minutes into 7 o'clock, so we are on top of the hour. It's 8:15. So that's the story I had to tell you. Okay, you guys are going to have to tell the story in front of the panel of judges, and you'll be doing many more things like this when you get into your placements with whichever organization. Typically, as a part of your placements, they'll give you a case study problem to solve, right? And like I said, whether you become the full stack developer, front end developer, Python developer, quality assurance engineer, get into project management, business analysis, anything you do, you have a part to play in this story. And if you want to go further in your professional careers, I can tell you from years of being in the industry, it's over a decade that I have, right? So I have almost 13 years. I can guarantee you I've seen how it's working, and I know how it's working even now. You do need to be able to talk about your solutions, whether it's only with your colleagues first, and then later on with your customers and larger audiences. You have to get to that point if you really want to keep moving forward. Otherwise, you can do things. I'm not saying you can't, but life might get a little boring. You might only be coding. There's no fun in that. No? If you code something, you should be able to talk about it, right? You should be able to tell someone that. Like I said, your language, your grammar skills and things is only secondary in that. First, get that mode into talking, and that's why it's called a pitch. Pitch it at someone. Okay? All right, so that's it. Any questions? Are there any questions in the chat? ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවද කට්ටියට? ප්‍රශ්න නැති ළමයිනේ. නැද්ද?
Ma'am, there are some questions we received from the Slido platform. Shall we move on to them?
Sure, no problem. Let's see what we have as questions. I'll try to help and answer.
Okay. How can we manage neurosis or anxiety during the pitch?
Okay, so I think you meant to say nervousness, right?
Nervousness.
Yes, okay. That's okay. That's fine, Koshila. I think it was Koshila talking, right? So, okay, here are some of the things that I have done. Typically, what happens is, like I said, right, I try not to artificially try to talk. Now, when I say artificially try to talk is, that's why the dry run part I mentioned. When you are doing a dry run, right, don't wait to do it separately. Don't say, I'll do my part separately, I'll practice at home and come. The first instance, you can get a feel for how you're going to react in front of an audience if you haven't done this before. right, is to talk in front of your team. They're your team, no? Now, all this time for 3 weeks, you have been working together, no? First, practice in front of them. Don't wait to do it at home and say, I'll practice at home alone. Because when you're at home alone, who's going to give you feedback? Most of you, what you do it in front of a mirror, right? Sometimes not even in front of a mirror, you're staring at your phone and talking. And now you guys are all, most of you on TikTok and stuff, no? So you should actually have a bit more confidence than our generation, right? I'm just joking about it. But one thing is practice in front of your team. Then between yourselves, you will understand. And then maybe within your team, sometimes if you feel that someone is struggling a bit, someone else can pitch in. It's okay. That doesn't make the person talking look bad, right? So that also you have to be prepared for. So one thing is that. So first practice with your team. Do a full round of the entire pitch with your team. And then try to even simulate a Q&A. Now what happens in Q&A, guys, is it happens in two ways, right? Sometimes, now when we come to customers, right? Some customers are nice. They say, when I say nice, they are patient, or they realize it's no point in interrupting a session in between. They wait till the end and ask you the questions. But customer is customer, no? We don't always have the luxury where they will wait till the end. Some people interrupt you in between and ask questions. So I don't know how it's going to be formally for your presentation or your pitch, right? But you can be prepared for both. That's why I said if someone interrupts and asks a question there, then the person talking will automatically get distracted because something is stopping that flow that you were used to know. Then someone else has to be prepared to answer that. Very often, unless you have previous experience doing it and your mind is able to quickly switch from the track that you are going on to focusing on that specific problem and answering it, it takes practice, right? Some of you will have it, some of you won't have it straight away. You'll need a bit more practice. But someone else has to be prepared to quickly jump in to answer. Okay, so those little techniques in between. So as I said, also, like I said, if you have 4 people on the panel of judges, right? Don't stare at what I say is the trick sometimes we do is now if you are saying, now it's very difficult for me to do this because it would have been much easier if I was physically meeting you guys and I could have shown it, right? Say someone is standing in front of you. I know the general tendency is to say, look at a person in their eyes and talk. That's when you make a connection with someone. When I mean connection, that person realizes you're focused on them. But sometimes you have to focus a little away from their face, maybe right behind their ear or something like that, so that you don't get too distracted by their facial expressions. For an example, like I said, maybe someone on the panel, so translating back, maybe they are actually sleepy and they yawn. They are not yawning because you're boring. They're yawning because they haven't slept yesterday. But natural human tendencies, you see the yawn and you're like, okay, they're not listening to me. So to stop yourself from getting distracted, right? Focus a little away from the face, not so much that you're staring at the sky. Then it looks like you're giving a lecture rather than anything else, right? You don't do things like that. But try not to focus too much on people's individual expressions. Another thing is in terms of your pre-preparation also, right? Don't try to remember a lot of things, guys. That's why I said you have a few points on the slide now. When you're preparing, you prepare your story. Now, if you are going to tell a story to, we'll say you have a little sister or a brother or a small child, you don't think so much. No? You tell them a story so that it interests them. Try to practice like that. Okay? Now, the other thing is I know everyone thinks if you have your notes on the phone, it's much easier. But to be honest, guys, that also can be a distraction. Because what happens after a while, you're scrolling and you forget where you stop scrolling, right? All of a sudden you look up and you look down. Now your eyes are refocusing on a smaller space, bulleted items, small font. You can't remember which point over the other one. So at least if you're doing something like that, try to alternate at least in terms of colors. top line in blue, bottom line in black, blue, black. That way, at least you can be like, last I stopped at blue, now this has to be something in black I'm reading. But it's very difficult to do that when you're in front of someone, which is why I said have a few keywords. For an example, if you want to talk about something related to automation and you think you'll forget it, just have the word automation there. Don't type out the entire sentence you're going to say word to word, because you won't be able to read it like that in front of the audience. And the last point is this, guys. It's okay to be a little nervous. Your voice might shake a bit. You might swallow a few words. Worse things have happened to people in bigger audiences. Like I said, this is not meant to be a competition to judge your speaking skills. No, y'all are not comparing or doing anything like a debating competition. No, so it's okay. Train your mind. This is another trick, right? Train your mind to be like, I don't care. I will continue from wherever I stopped. Don't care අපිට යන්න ඕනේ in that sense. Like that's a little mental confidence booster for you, right? Since most of you might be doing it for the first time, right? කමක් නෑ. වැරදුනට ප්‍රශ්නයක් නෑ. ඔයිට වඩා දේවල් වෙනවා. There are worse things that can happen in front of client calls. Sometimes totally unexpected things happen. No matter how much preparation you do, there are times when there might be one or two people in the client team that might come and turn around in a completely different direction. There's only so much you can predict. So manage it likewise. Those are only a few of the tips I can think of, guys. There's no point trying to train you with so many other things for a very short session. So what's the time period these guys will get to present, Kaushal? 15 minutes and 5 minutes for Q&A, is it?
Ma'am, they get totally 10 minutes. So 5 minutes for the pitching part and 5 minutes for the demonstration, and another 5 minutes for the Q&A session.
Okay. So if you have only 5 minutes to do the pitch and then to do the demonstration, now I think demonstration gave me the idea you guys are going to be doing a live demo of your solution. Is that so? You're going to actually show it, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, if you only have 5 minutes to do that, guys, you can't show all possible capabilities of your solution. Okay? That's how it is. Now, this is that's something I can, now that you mentioned it. As a part of doing your demonstration, guys, if you have 5 minutes, very important for you during your dry run to plan for that 5 minutes, the sequence of what you're going to do, including if you think there's going to be wait times and all of that, right? You have to have your backup plan ready. So for an example, I'll tell you something like this. Typically, if you're presenting something that says there's a form where you have to fill in some data input into a form is not a big deal a thing. Most people should be able to manage that with a basic we say a JavaScript or AngularJS application, not JavaScript, sorry, AngularJS front end, right? We say something like that. For that matter, you can use other technologies also. There are things called Power Apps and all of that in Microsoft. You can use those also to create forms. For that matter, you can use SharePoint to create a form. So if your point is to show that you have captured all the important information related to this business problem as a part of filling that form, have the form pre-filled. It's okay. The idea you're trying to get is, but what is most important there? There are 5 fields in this, 3 are mandatory fields. If you don't have it, you can't move forward in this business problem. Maybe one thing you can show there is, if you really want to show it, I'm just hypothetical, right? You want to show it, you can delete off one of the mandatory fields and then show that if you try to submit it, it shows an error. But don't try to fill all 5 fields during that time, because it's really not a big value addition most of the time. So focus in that 5 minutes on what is most valuable for you to show as a part of your solution. The what we say, the oh wow factor, and the audience is suddenly like, oh, I didn't know that could be done like that. So that way you cut out that waiting time, right? You put the fields, you wait for a submission, then you're waiting. So that's why you have to have a preparation round beforehand. And obviously then these things like network connectivity and all of that you have to have. If you're switching from a modem to say a hotspot, someone be prepared. Someone's hotspot has to be on at that time. You can't be suddenly discussing and say, hey, can you turn on your hotspot? And then you look for the password also at that time. එහෙම බෑ. හරිද? So focus on that oh wow factor during the demonstration. Don't focus so much on the what we call the mundane things, what everyone is doing. Form filling is now, it's very May thing, right? And it's okay if I say something goes wrong. We say you were supposed to, now we say in that solution for capturing the attendance, right? One of the quick things you can do is, now I'm saying now you don't have a lot of choices, right? You are in front of your audience. First and foremost, turn off the sharing option. I'm just trying to visualize it like now you're in front of your judge panel of judges, no? Right? Turn off your sharing option. Then the person who can best talk through a situation, step up in front. Whoever is behind them, you try to solve whatever the problem is silently behind that person. But don't do it while you're sharing the screen. Then you go to your ID, you go here, you go there. Everyone in the panel of judges can see. I'm just joking around, but I think that's what you try to do, something to fix it there. No? So don't need to show the entire panel of judges what you're doing, but first have the common sense quickly to turn off your sharing, right? And then admit it. We seem to have run into a technical issue. It can happen, guys. That doesn't mean to say a solution is bad. It can be some really හිතපු නැති පොඩි දෙයක් ඒ වෙලාවෙ වෙන්නේ. But now you to manage the situation. No? So the person who was doing the pitch or something, step up in front at that time and say, hope you understood what our solution is. That might be a good time for you to, what we say, බලෙන් or forcefully get a Q&A. We seem to have run into a few technical issues, but until we solve this, are there any questions you would like to ask us now? Now, up until this point, you have done the pitch, no? So that you have only used slides, no? Use that time. You're buying time for the team. In the background, whoever's working on the technical solution needs to tick, 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 gala, see what you have. One thing you can do is, guys, I would recommend this to you. That won't get you a lot of brownie points. When you're doing your dry run with your demonstration, record it. Worst case scenario, something actually happens on the day of the pitch and you have no option. You can විනාඩි දෙක තුනක් අරගෙන විසඳන්න හැදුවත් in the background, you can't show them the demo recording. Then they know it has worked at some point. Always have, that's the backup planning. Record your demonstration, do one good round of it before it. Record it and keep it. When I say demonstration recording, not you talking, just the screen grab of the solution. Have that as a backup. Worst case scenario, something goes wrong and that little drama I told you, you try to get a Q&A while the team fixes it in the background. That doesn't work. Someone make the call. That's why I say you need someone to lead the initiative. Now you see, it's not always about your technical solution. No matter how good your technical solution is, if something goes wrong, there's be someone who's going to lead the team from the front and be like, I'm sorry guys, I don't think this is going to work. Let's show them the video. Show them the video. I don't know how successful or not it will be based on the panel of judges, but they will at least, hopefully there'll be one or two people thinking they were creative enough. They were conscious enough that something like this can happen. They had a backup plan. Okay, right. Any other questions? Any other questions, guys?
I think no, ma'am.
Okay, good. So hopefully you guys, I know right now I've spoken for an hour and 15 minutes or so. I don't think you are going to remember everything I said. Of course, the recording is there if you want to reference it. but take the important stuff out of it. Some of you might be good in certain parts of this already. When I say good, you may have an understanding of what I'm saying. You may have already thought through it. You may have already practiced for it. Some of you may not. So all of you try to take the part that is missing and then fill in the gaps. Right? That's also part of that, smart research versus pointers features. So even from this session, take what's missing and then fix it up instead of trying to take everything out of it, because sometimes you may actually know some of these things, right? And you might be all right with it. Okay. So I hope that you guys have a good outcome when you present to your panel of judges, right? And good luck to all of you. I think all of you have come a long way to get to this point. And it's obviously been a bit of a competition to come this far, right? So you all have clearly done something different to the others. So go that extra mile. And at the end of the day, no matter who, I don't know how your awards are going to be. I assume there's going to be a first, second, and third place, and the others will have been participants. But no matter what, it's the experience that counts at the end of the day, as much as getting a position or not. Because this process is part of your transferable skills into a professional working environment. As much as your core skills will be important, these are skills that you will immediately need to transfer when you get into a working environment in different capacities, right? Straight away, you won't be talking to customers maybe, but it is something, the sooner you start building, the more effective it becomes when you really need to use it. All right? Okay then. Thanks a lot for your time, and best of luck with your pitches. Okay?
Thank you, Ms. Nadisha, for your inspiring words. We learned a lot about properly pitching a business idea from your session. And we think you gave clear clarifications on the questions, and I hope you all get your questions clear. It was a very productive and informative session. I'm sure you all will agree with me. Ms. Nadisha, we are very grateful for all your effort and for taking time out of your schedule and conducting this webinar today. So, Ms. Nadisha, thank you very much. And please accept this digital token of appreciation on behalf of the organizing committee of IdeaForge.
Thank you very much, guys. That's very sweet of you. Okay. Thanks a lot. And I'm happy to have been part of it, right? I was also once one of you. I do know how that feels like. And it's always good to be able to mentor the next generation and the batches of folks coming into the industry. All right. So thank you and good luck once again.
Thank you all for joining us this evening as we embark on this exciting journey with IdeaForge. Your presence here is a testament to power of innovation and collaboration. On behalf of our IdeaForge organizing committee, I would like to express our deepest gratitude to each participant for their enthusiasm and dedication. Together, let's make IdeaForge a remarkable experience filled with creativity, innovation, and positive change. Thank you once again for being a part of this inspiring event. Have a wonderful evening and see you soon.
Yeah, one word, Coach, that you guys as well. Fantastic job organizing it. And it's very good that you guys are doing these kind of things, right? Especially ahead of the actual pitch. It makes a lot of sense, right? You're actually helping your fellow students make the most of that opportunity. So good on you guys for organizing it. Very well done. All right. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.